Mitch, thanks for joining us on the Daily Aus. The report's just come out. Tell me where you are, how you're feeling, and what your days look like today.
I am in Sydney. It's extremely wet and indicative of sort of, I think, how a number of people in the music industry have been feeling. A bit dishevelled, a bit all over the place. Yeah, I think the report is extremely helpful for us to be able to quantify, map this music festival sector in the country, because we haven't had a national piece of research before. We've been advocating for this and managed to get it in the National Cultural Policy, which we were super excited to see, and I think it's getting released at the most optimal time. So yeah, it's we see it as the basis for even more research into music festivals across the country, and super excited to have it out there and to hear everyone's reactions.
I want to start with a bit of a philosophical question for you. Why are music festivals so important?
I think music festivals are hugely important. Everyone loves hanging out with their mates, going away together, get out of town, switch off, particularly these days, and enjoy some music. I think, out of all the art forms that people engage with, music is the highest. So it's unsurprising that festivals are, have been such a draw card for people in the past.
We're going to get to this a bit later in the discussion, but I kind of feel like it's the right place for this question. Is it important enough to a society that governments should be supporting them financially?
I think government definitely needs to be at the table at the moment. We've seen such huge impacts into music festivals these past few years. It's not just the pandemic and lockdowns. It was prior to that. We saw the Black Summer bushfires cancel a number of events. We've seen La Nina and wet weather impact events since then. We just haven't had the opportunity to really fully recover from those ongoing impacts. And the economic impact and the benefits to communities, particularly in regional areas across the country, are huge. And for similar industries that have those impacts, whether it's, mining, agriculture, that have as greater sort of economic impacts in some of these regional communities, for some reason we're just not seen on the same, pedestal. And previously, festivals and across contemporary music haven't really gone to government for support. It's only in these past few years that we've needed that support, and why we're asking for actually just time-limited, short-term funding to weather the immediate challenges, which have been largely out of our control since the pandemic and, supply chain issues.
And those details were abundantly clear in yesterday's release of a report from Creative Australia. It said that of the 535 music festivals in Australia in 22-23, 35% of them lost money. Is something happening on that supply side that's outweighing, because people are still going to music festivals, right? So are they just becoming more expensive to produce?
Some of our festivals have had their, highest attendance numbers on record, but they're making less and less money. And we've seen examples of some of our members' events selling out the last 6 months, and they didn't make any money because they're just covering costs. We've seen costs up 30 to 40% on every single line item. When it comes to insurance, it's even greater than that. And ticket prices just can't be raised at the same rate to meet those costs. So the margins are super tight, and you're seeing those examples of nearly having to sell out just to break even.
So why do you think then we're getting to a point where people don't want to spend more and more money on the experience because I think there's an understanding that the supply costs are going up. Are we hitting that ceiling of, young people are just not going to fork out another $100 on top of the ticket price?
Well, we haven't seen ticket prices go up for as much as, the costs have gone up. I just want to make that clear up front. But yeah, I think cost of living pressures are hitting everyone, and rent increases, particularly amongst young people. I think the data out of the report that we find most concerning is that the 18 to 24-year-old age group is not the largest demographic when it comes to ticket purchases for music festivals anymore. They consistently have been, and we're now seeing them drop down below the the 25 to 29-year-old age group, and that has a huge flow-on effect to that ongoing pipeline of an audience, and also locking in music lovers from, when they're sort of finishing school and able to go to live music, to be music and live music and festival attendees for, decades after that.
Is there an argument to be made, though, that just the habits and trends amongst that 18 to 24-year-old cohort have changed and moved away from festivals and towards the Taylor Swifts, the Fred Agains, the kind of mega tours?
Well, I think from an artist perspective, we're seeing a lot of those big name headline artists see that a stadium show or a arena show just for themselves is more of a financial incentive, and that's having a flow-on effect to festival lineups. And I think, we don't fully understand the changes in what young people are looking for from their live music experiences at the moment. I think there's a lot of impacts from COVID times, lockdown. A lot of 18 to 24-year-olds, we're talking about finishing high school, starting uni in lockdown on Zoom, not going to these sort of formative cultural experiences, going away with your mates for a weekend. And I think the costs are also having an impact. We're anecdotally hearing that, people just, as much as Taylor Swift costs, it's actually, less of a cost than some of the multi-day music festivals, but you're getting one artist or two with the support rather than, in some cases, hundreds.
So you're representing festivals when you go and have these discussions with government, and I presume that's both on a state and a federal level. How's government receiving the requests of your industry?
Well, we had a big meeting with the federal government yesterday. So Creative Australia, the arts agency, convened a meeting of festival promoters as well as us as the peak body. So I think the news of the cancellations and with this research coming out and the findings within that, there has been an understanding of the pressures. I think given the range of things we've discussed today, they're also trying to grapple with what the challenges are and what their role might be. I think what was quite forcefully put by a number of festival organisers yesterday was that the federal government has a role to play in the insurance industry. The federal government needs to be at the table when we're having discussions around changes to the insurance offerings to festivals, because there's essentially bordering on market collapse. Premiums are through the roof, and it really is having a flow-on impact to an organiser deciding whether or not, if they don't get that huge ticket buying when they go on sale, whether they hold off and sort of take the risk of seeing whether they'll sell those tickets before the event, or do they, sort of pull the pin early because they know they might be up for, in some cases, tens of millions of dollars in losses. And if they don't have insurance, that obviously has a big impact on their decision making.
One more question from me, Mitch. You're in these rooms, many would argue you're talking on behalf of young Australians here, trying to establish a future for the festival industry. What points are you finding resonate the best with government and with, let's say, it's not a nice way to say, but let's say people outside the target demographic of going to a festival? Is it the point about how important these are economically for regional communities, for, industry? Or is it what we started this discussion with about how important festivals are to the cultural fabric?
Both factors work for governments, and I think the combination of the two is literally what is convincing people. It's not just that their formative experience for young people to enjoy time with their mates and their identity building. They were for me, love of music and that, but also the impacts. I think the cancellations have crystallized the potential loss of benefits of the economic impacts on regional communities. I think it has really sort of focused the minds of government. You know, the report released yesterday outlines 535 festivals across the country. It's a huge spread of events across the country that if we start to see more cancellations, it's going to have a huge flow-on effect.